Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Grant Wilson, and I'm an account manager for our healthcare market. I've got Mark Deegan with me as well. He's the director of our corporate marketing here at ColorID. We really shouldn't hear from much from Mark unless something goes amiss. We'll think of him as Oz behind the curtain there. We want to welcome you to the next segment in our webinar series, continuing the conversation. We're excited to have our friends from HID Global with us today, and they'll be presenting Streamlining Your Onboarding Process. We have some interactive polls for you to participate in, and of course we welcome you to post any questions you might have throughout the presentation, and we'll answer those at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. And so we're going through the introductions. We'll do a quick overview of ColorID, and of course we'll move quickly on to HID Global's presentation. If you want to go to the next slide. For those of you who aren't familiar with ColorID, I'd like to provide, again, just a quick overview. We work within the area of secure card issuance, biometrics, printer systems, and ID and visitor management software. The account managers at ColorID are separated by vertical markets opposed to geographic regions. And I think this gives us at ColorID a unique insight and perspective into each market and allows us to have a more focused and knowledgeable consultative approach. As you can see, we operate in markets such as healthcare, of course, higher education, government, and a few others. Next slide, please. We are honored to have built relationships with many healthcare facilities across the country, with customer service really being the driving component behind our success. From our technical support team to our service bureau for print jobs and recordings to our product management team, the customer remains front and center, and our consultative approach remains key to our success. Next slide, please. Over the last couple of decades, ColorID has truly grown into a company with a global presence. And I think this just gives us that much more experience and a unique understanding of the different challenges that our customers face every day. And speaking of global, at this point, I'd like to introduce our friends at HID Global. And I think one of the reasons they're such a valued and close partner with ColorID is they share our same focus on customer service, support, and that consultative approach to finding solutions for their customers. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Jeanette and Dave for the presentation today.
All right, thanks. First off, I'd like to thank everybody for attending the webinar today, and thank you to ColorID for inviting us to come and speak a bit about our smart onboarding solution that we have to discuss with you today. We had a little bit of a change in plans. Dave, who was going to be the presenter on the HID side, had a little bit of an emergency, so I'm stepping in. My name is Nils Wallander. I'm a senior marketing manager for HID Global. I work on the product team, largely focusing on card personalization. Been doing it for a decade now. It's been a long time, so many of you on the phone maybe have run across me in some other capacity, but really looking forward to sharing with you what we have today, and I'll hand it off to Jeanette to talk a little bit about herself.
Hi there, everybody. I'm Jeanette Onler. I'm Senior Director of Strategic Sales for Healthcare at HID Safe. I too have kind of a long track record like Niels. I've been in the industry for 11 plus years, working with healthcare organizations in regards to identity and access management. So again, we appreciate you joining us, and let's make this very interactive. Ask us questions, and we have the polling questions to drive the interest across the conversation around smart onboarding. Thank you.
Yeah, so smart onboarding, while it's a nice name, it really does bring forward some nice benefits. And so we know that onboarding of new employees or healthcare professionals is anything but easy these days. Information is trying to go to a lot of different locations. And so with this solution, what we're trying to do is streamline that entire process. So when we combine HID Safe Credential Manager with FARGO Connect, it'll help to automate the overall onboarding process and workflows, and it does so in a cloud-based card issuance solution, which, when we say cloud-based, it could be a fully hosted solution from HID, or it could be something that's working on-prem. So we can kind of work in both capacities there. And the ultimate goal is to make sure that you can badge your entire workforce quickly when they come in, and make sure that it's done compliantly. And I think some of the things that we'll share with you today with the ongoing health crisis and working remotely and the way that work has changed, I think some of the aspects that we share with you today will also help in that capacity, in this new environment that we have, as much as it did in the past.
So I'm going to go through some of the healthcare challenges. And over the last 6 months, I think the new terminology is to remain fluid or pivot from one direction to the next. And I know all the hospitals that I've been working with are trying to stay on top of that. But from a healthcare challenge perspective, there's always those security challenges and issues. Understanding who's coming into your hospital, understanding that workplace violence is a real issue, and how do we control that in regards to those individuals that might be coming in to do something to harm either to patients or to your medical staff. Compliance, regulations, CDC guidelines, CMS, the Joint Commission. I mean, the list goes on and on, from HIPAA guidelines and the FDA. So again, we understand these challenges. We work with organizations across the country to better drive what are your challenges and how are the right solutions and technologies to align with those challenges. Obviously, from like I said, the last 6 months, we're looking at infectious disease, controlling those individuals coming to the hospital, making sure you're protecting your community, making sure you're keeping your medical staff safe, the patients and visitors that are able to come see them. All these things come into play. You've had employees that have been furloughed, or there has been layoffs because of ambulatory services or cancer centers and things like that being, shut down from elective surgeries. So we understand where this is coming from, and we look to you to say, okay, what are your top priorities and challenges, and how can we help you find those right solutions?
Yeah, and so with that, we want to have a little bit of an interactive session here today. So there'll be a couple different points during this webinar where we'll put out a poll or a survey for you as the attendees to sort of interact. And so, Jeanette just kind of mentioned a handful of challenges that different organizations are faced on a day-to-day basis. So I wanted to ask you, what challenges are you facing today? And we can kind of, as a group, to see maybe everybody in this audience is facing a certain challenge. And maybe as we go through our webinar, we could try to focus on that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and launch a poll for everybody. We'll leave it open for a handful of seconds, but if you could please just indicate, which and select all that apply of the challenges that you're facing today. All right, looks like the poll is working. I'm seeing some people voting, so we'll give it a little bit more time for everybody to enter in their information, and then we'll go ahead and we'll share that with the collective group here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll now. Looks like we got a pretty good subset of people answering. So let's pull that back up so you can actually see how people responded. So it looks, fairly across the board. Half of the people that responded, have some challenge with most of these. Overwhelmingly, the complex process, that's the biggest one. So it seems as though the process to onboard a new employee or new healthcare professional is just a lot of steps. And so it'd be interesting to understand that a bit more if we have some follow-on conversations or whatnot. But I got to say that's something that comes up quite a bit when we go out and we talk to different customers, is that you're swiveling between applications. Maybe you're having to input data into multiple different sources. It can just take a lot of time. Slow onboarding process, half the respondents hitting that one up. Compliance a little bit less, and then reliance on IT to maintain PCs. It looks like only a third are having that challenge, so most of you are probably able to manage it on your own and not needing to pull in IT, which is always a good thing to be self-sufficient on that side. So hopefully that's interesting for those on the line to see how others are being faced with challenges these days. And we'll make sure we'll kind of tailor the conversation to kind of focus on some of those high-hitting pieces as we go through.
So this is a perfect segue to the next slide in regards to the pure chaos, just like you had stated there from that polling, is the number of steps it takes to onboard and offboard employees and contractors today. So it is pretty chaotic. There are several steps. There's several times and minutes. If you really allocated, how long does it take for my badging office to onboard an individual to where they get the credential? How many people have to touch that process? It becomes very complicated, and there's lots of steps that go into that process to make sure it's done correctly. So it's a little bit of a, head scratching type moment saying, okay, we need to take it from here to this step and make sure you don't miss anything. When you're going across multiple systems, that's another challenge that has to take into play. It's just not all happening under one platform. It's you're logging into one system, getting information, data on that employee, going to another system, and then at the end of the day, printing that badge, and maybe even pushing the access rights and privileges to that access control system that you have. We look at these organizations and say, okay, again, as I said, how long does it really take? Let's sit down and let's figure out this maze, this map, and determine how we can streamline as much of that as possible. So that is obviously a key pain point for the onboarding process.
Mm-hmm. So the other area that we wanted to dive deeper on, and so there's many that we could have, but for the sake of this session here, we picked a couple. And so the other one is isolated workstations. This seems to be a component that people run into pain points. On the poll here today, the relying on IT support, maybe not as big of a problem having to call in IT, but if you are self-managing it, having a PC-based application does put more onus on your team. If you're not having to call it to IT, but your team to manage it, install the applications, product updates, obviously can be a nightmare. Anytime you get a Windows update, it could break, whether or not a peripheral works, and adding new workstation takes time and money. The other piece that we've run into, people have been communicating to us, is limited flexibility to issue out of the card office. So if they need to spool up more workstations, or they need to go, let's say, to where the new employee orientation is taking place, that becomes a challenge, having people walk all over the building to get that done. And so, if you put this in under the filter of working remotely and having less contact with individuals, having everybody come through a card office, maybe that's not the best scenario. Maybe you want to have the cards printed remotely and then have them distributed remotely. And so you can do that as well in a different scenario. But with a PC-based application, you're going to be limited. What I do want to highlight here is, as we go through this webinar, we're going to kind of share with you some of the pain points that we've been hearing. We'll talk a little bit about what we can drive forward with the SMART Onboarding solution, but really at the end, we'll show you a demonstration, so you'll get to see the product live going through that. And so we'll bring on Andrew to help with that. But just letting you know that it won't be all slides here. We will get to a demonstration.
Very good. Thanks, Niels. So let's look at a real customer scenario here and how we pull this data together. We sit down and interview the healthcare organizations from security to badging and understand what does that process look like. And as you can see from this slide, pretty much passing back and forth, going from one system to the next system, searching for the identity, making sure you have the right employee information before you start the process of badging that particular individual or providing them a credential. Because of healthcare organizations, I would say probably 75% of them, there's a lot of silos out there, so you're not alone. The systems are there in place. Maybe they're 20-year-old, 15-year-old technology, but they're not talking to each other. There's no level of integration across these systems. So that's why it creates quite the challenge that we've been talking about, is onboarding those employees. Where you go to get that information, how you're going from one system to the next system. At the end of the day, you want to be able to capture their photo, fingerprint, and issue them a credential, right? That's the results. But what are all the steps that occur in order to gather that information, gather that card data or that card number, and provisioning that into your access control system, as well as it being part of that employee's records. So it's somewhat cumbersome, chaotic, just as Niels and I have been talking about. And with organizations today, Mondays are basically new hire day. So you might have 50 new hires every week, or you might have 200 new hires every week. People coming back to work, returning to work that were on furlough, or maybe even potentially that have been laid off. So this is a real scenario where there's multiple systems, multiple people touching those steps, and the ones in the red, you can see those are the big gaps, is being able to make sure that that credential and information is captured appropriately and there's no missing data. And then later in this deck, we'll kind of show you what happens when you have a smart onboarding solution in place, how we can eliminate some of those gaps and holes. So this is talking about, are you ready? I don't think anybody was ready for what happened over the last 6 months, but are you future ready? Within healthcare, you're managing multiple different types of identities coming into the hospital. You're having different challenges and issues that are thrown at you on a daily basis. As I said, being fluid and pivoting from one challenge to the next really does put stress on your organization and probably pushes you to the limits. So as we look through and we look at different solutions and the onboarding process, we said, how can we enable you with the right identity and access management software so that you are fully prepared for any challenges that are popping up that you're being faced with, being able to manage them and really have that best of class experience when new employees come on board, or you're bringing furloughed employees back to work.
Yeah, and so in framing that up, we wanted to pause here a bit and have you tell us a little bit about yourself, and we can kind of see how maybe you stack up against the others. And what we're going to use this information for in the end is we'll capture some of these details in terms of what your scenario looks like today, and then what we're going to do is try to average that out. And in the background, as we're going through this, I'm going to be multitasking, and I'll actually calculate time saved with an automated workflow and also money saved. And granted, this is a fairly high level view of it, but so answering some of these questions, filling out this poll, what we'll do is during the course of this presentation, we'll churn the numbers, and then we'll actually be able to communicate back to you, hey, this is the potential savings that you could see by moving to smart onboarding with HID, or even if you went with somebody else and you automated some of your workflows, right? So these numbers aren't specific necessarily to smart onboarding from us. It could be anybody else. So we're trying to be helpful here and giving you a sense of time saved and money saved. Obviously, of course, we'd love you to move with us, but we think this could be a use for you. So what we'll do is there'll be probably about 5 questions that we'll go through here, and I'll launch the first one for you. And so this first one is, how many workstations are you currently printing from? So just relatively quickly, 1 through 3, 3 through 5, or more than 5. It looks like the polling is working. I see people entering stuff in, so give people a little bit of time to get that in. All right, I think that looks like we got just about everybody. So we'll close that. For the sake of each one, I'll just kind of share it real quickly so everybody can see where everybody's coming in at. So a little bit of a mix between just 1 to 3 and more than 5. And on to the next question, total number of badges printed, or excuse me, total number of badge printers in operation today. All right, looks like everybody's gotten in, so we'll close that and share that with the group.
Even between 1 to 3 and 5+.
Yep.
That's
so
very
it sounds like,
interesting. Yes.
the number of number of workstations and number of printers, it seems to be a one-to-one relationship there. So we'll hide that, go on to the next one. This one is total number of badges printed in your organization during a year.
And this could also include lost badges that are reprinted, new hires, staff, medical students that need badges, contractors.
All right, looks like everybody's voted on that. So we'll close that, share it so everybody can take a quick peek. So we're in the, up to 5,000, maybe some in the 5 to 10,000 range. We have a couple people that are printing very significant amount of badges, in the 20,000 or more. Move on to the next one. And this one is asking how many of those cards are actually being shipped. So, if it's 0%, that means none of the cards are being shipped, and you're handing them to employees, during the orientation, or they're having to come into the office to get it.
It could be using FedEx or courier services as well to get those badges to your employees in remote locations.
All right, we'll close that one. Everybody's doing a great job of entering it in pretty quickly, which makes it nice.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so thank you guys. So it looks like a large percentage of them are being handed out to employees, which is nice from a personal touch perspective, but a quarter of them are being shipped out. And we'll go on to the last one. And this one is about how much time or how many minutes specifically are spent onboarding a new employee.
And you might also consider that if multiple people are spending 1 or 2 minutes handling that onboarding process, or you have 5 employees, we hear, it's across the board, right? So take and consider overall time that it takes to onboard.
One doesn't often think about all the cooks in the kitchen there between HR and IT and security and some of those things.
All right, and so this one looks like we're around the 10-minute mark, but unfortunately not very many people are getting it done under 5 minutes, which seems to match up with the earlier poll where people were saying the complex process, if you have to do multiple, it's likely going to take you
multiple steps. Yes.
Yep, more than 10 minutes. So it seems to be a fair representation of what we've got.
And those of you that are unknown, it's not uncommon, because until you really sit down and walk through the process, you kind of don't even realize how much time it does take. So that's interesting as well.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for that. That was our last question. So you may have heard some clicks. So I was going through and kind of trying to run through some of this. So as Jeanette talks, I'll finish running the numbers and I can share that with the group here at the end. But yeah, so it's interesting. So we've got a nice mixture of folks on the line. Some that have less than 5 workstations. Some have more. Some are printing a very significant amount of badges above 20,000, and some are under 5,000. So.
And we can help you with working through those processes and really develop that ROI or that executive summary for you on what is the cost of onboarding. Because I know more than ever, budgets are being challenged, priorities are put in place. So if you can walk in and show a significant ROI and say, this is what it's costing us today, and by adopting a new solution or technology, this is how we can reduce overall costs, drive efficiencies, drive productivity. Sometimes it's maybe we can reallocate the FTEs that are doing this today and doing more security type tasks and administrative tasks. So again, we look to you to say, how would you best use this in your facility, and where can we cut the costs, where we can show you operational cost reductions in driving with a unified platform for that onboarding process, taking away the swiveling from one system to the next system and multiple people touching the onboarding process.
Yeah. Very good. All right, great. So now I want to transition over and introduce you to Smart Onboarding through HID Safe and FARGO Connect. So we talked about this at the beginning, but we're really bringing forward two really nice solutions from identity and access management solutions. We've got Safe Credential Manager, which will be the primary application that's used in the onboarding solution. It's got the automated workflows, and then HID FARGO Connect, which is the card personalization arm, if you will, of this smart onboarding, which will sort of make sure that the card issuance goes smoothly, allows for things to be taken care of in remote ways, gives you more feedback, which we'll get into. And ultimately, by putting these two pieces together, it allows you to badge your entire workforce quickly and efficiently and give you really never before seen visibility into your issuance system as it takes place.
So the key aspect of the smart onboarding solution is really driving productivity and reducing the onboarding time, simplifying the process the best we can, streamlining and driving automation for those credential issuance. The other challenge is making sure that you have a single platform where you're not going from one system to the next system, installing different softwares or different drivers. It's a unified user interface, and it enables you to, again, take those steps away. As we talked about, that's probably one of your biggest heartaches right now, is the number of steps it takes in provisioning or issuing a credential. The ability to remotely provide a credential to, if you have hospitals across the state or multiple states, from a centralized platform, sending that card information to a printer that's in a remote hospital, so that an administrator can grab that credential and issue it to their employees. I know from the results, it sounds like you're doing a lot of that in-house, so you don't have those external FedEx charges or courier fees, but being able to get that credential to the right person at the right location without them having to drive, an hour, 30 minutes, or how long it may take to the badging office to get their credential. And also peace of mind. I mean, that's a big concern here, is having that best in class, that positive experience for your employees. We don't want it to be like the DMV office where people are standing in line. It's a painful experience. They know it's going to take them 30 minutes to 2 hours just to get their credential. With the smart onboarding solution, you really are optimizing your operations. You're putting the best in class solution in place and reducing those costs. So it does make a lot of sense. And when you see Andrew go through the demo, you're going to see how that is streamlined and what that user interface looks like.
Thanks, Jeanette. And we wanted to dive a little bit deeper into two different aspects around what smart onboarding can bring forward. First one being a connected cloud. And so, with Safe, with HID FARGO Connect, we mentioned this earlier, in that, while it can be a hosted solution, it can also be done on-premise. When we say connected cloud, you still get a lot of the same, if not all the same benefits when running it on an on-premise. You just, if you want to be able to manage it from your home office, you just need to be VPN'd, which I imagine most of us have today. But with that, you get the rapid deployment. If you need to stand up additional workstations, you can do that almost immediately. You just have to log in through a web page, type in your username and password, just like you would for Netflix or anything else. No software, no drivers to install. This is awesome on the printer side. I'm from the printer world, the FARGO printer side, and as much as I love those printers, anytime you have to deal with printer drivers, it becomes a pain, right? Do I have the latest one? How do I get it installed? It just becomes a pain. So with this solution, you actually get away from the drivers, and it's included within the FARGO Connect solution. So there's nothing there to manage on that side. And then being able to quickly manage and provision those physical access credentials really from anywhere, using any device. And when we say, doing that from anywhere, it's not as though they're printed and then you have to take the card and enter details into another system. The way that we've integrated FARGO Connect with HID Safe is there's actually a card reader inside of the printer that's able to read the card number or any access control details that may be on the smart chip of that contactless card. And we take that information and we put it back into Safe, which can then send it to an access control solution, a vending solution, And that means that as soon as that card is printed, it can be active and live for your employee to use immediately, which is great from a speed standpoint, but it's also great because you could have a printer sitting out somewhere, have the card be printed, maybe just have the front desk person verify with a government issued ID to make sure that's the right person, and hand them the card and they're away and good. So you're not having to come in close contact, or not having multiple people come in close contact to give that out, which is a really good thing. The automated onboarding component, this is absolutely crucial in terms of getting what can be complex processes to onboard employees, making that something simple. So, simplifying the complex, if you will, and using general rules. The HID Safe solution can ensure that the new employee is entered into the right systems. And so some examples would be, which office do they work at? What's their title? What's their role? Who is their manager? Just those three things can go a long ways in determining what the access rights or access levels should be for that employee, and they can be automatically assigned to that individual and sent to the access control system without really having to go in and select, here, give them this access right, or I need to go look at a matrix to figure out, based on this, who they are and where they're working, who their bosses have to give them that. It really takes the stress out of the operator in terms of onboarding, and reduces the clicks to just a couple clicks to get somebody onboarded. Something that should be fairly straightforward and obvious, but it also takes away the mistakes. Now it's reliant on the person setting up, configuring the solution, but once you do that task, now all the mistakes are alleviated from the operator. It's a part of the workflow, it's part of the system. The stress on that person goes down. The stress for the employee, like if something were to happen and they didn't get enrolled improperly, that would go away as well. So this is a key component, and as I've kind of gone through with different customers, as we've talked about FARGO Connect and HID Safe, this really does make their life a whole lot easier.
So if you remember the real customer scenario workflow that I presented a few minutes ago, this is what it looks like in a future state with having the right technology and solutions in place. Doesn't matter what your HR system is. If you use Active Directory as your authoritative source, if you use a contractor management solution, you have an IAM solution. What we care about is that pre-hire data. So that information is coming into Safe. Once that's into Safe, then I'm going to say the magic begins, right? Per what Niels was saying is reducing the pain and reducing the steps, reducing the chaos that occurs when you get that pre or new hire data from your HR, your authoritative source system. It comes in one time into that interface. You're able to search for the identity. You're able to do the things you need to do to capture a photo or fingerprint or any other data that you might need on that particular profile before you issue that badge. Once it's all completed, then it's a push to print badge. And by doing that, it gives you, as Niels was saying, we're role-based, location-based. We understand what department you're from, which hospital you're working with, so that it's not going, okay, because they're at the Northwest Hospital, we need to give them this access rights and privileges. Oh, if they're at the main facility, then we need to give them these. We understand that data is pushed into Safe. Then when we push it to FARGO Connect, it understands exactly which credential or badge needs to be issued, reads that data, populates it back into Safe, and then distributes the badge. So it really does streamline this process, and it looks like a magical thing, right? Well, that's the magic of software. Automating those workflows, making sure that there are fewer steps, and driving efficiencies, driving productivity. And if any of you have sat in or attend a first day orientation day on Mondays, it's pretty crazy. It's pretty chaotic. And like I said, it doesn't matter if you are onboarding 50 new employees on a Monday or 200 employees on a Monday. You still have the same stress and issues as we talked about that first workflow. Managing between different systems, capturing a photo, maybe downloading a JPEG, all those things that happen. This way you can truly streamline those processes and really offer a best-in-class onboarding solution.
Great. All right, so this is the part where we now share a little bit about the information that you provided in the poll. So, what's the impact on your business? And so when you think about the impact on your business from a cost perspective, we and myself and others, it kind of comes across as an iceberg. People oftentimes understand the cost of onboarding or just giving a card or an ID to an individual by the tangible items, blank credentials, ribbons, over laminates. But underneath the water, just like an iceberg, there's going to be additional costs that come in that are maybe hard to calculate, such as PC maintenance, the card office staffing, if they're not full time and they're working on multiple different avenues or aspects, software maintenance and technical support calls. So these are all things that sort of roll into it. And using the information from the polls, what we kind of calculated out, and these are the numbers that I used. I said, about 5 locations based on the information that we got that seemed to be about right, with about 12 minutes, 10 to 12 minutes to onboard an employee, 5,000 cards being printed with maybe 1,000 of those being shipped out with 5 printers. And what it came out to was about 800 hours being saved, and with 833 hours being saved, with about 800 of that in terms of the automating of the workflow. So bringing that down from 12 minutes to say, 3 minutes if we're going to be conservative, or 4 minutes. We really think we could bring it down even further than that, but we don't want to say it'll take you 1 minute or 30 seconds, but bringing it down by about 75%. Reduced maintenance time, save about 20 hours. So moving to FARGO Connect with sort of the centralized visibility will help you just save time in terms of being more proactive versus reactive, because you can actually see all of your printers, see the status of them, see the consumable levels, which Andrew will show here in just a little bit. So about 800 hours total being saved between automating the workflow and maintenance time. From a cost saving perspective, came out to roughly $50,000, $52,000. But again, it's to be exact, but that's a pretty big swag given what we've seen. With shipping costs being in the neighborhood of $8,000 to $10,000. Maintenance on the PCs, inventory holding, resolving print errors, technical support being around $22,000, and that's what we're including there is costs of the PCs, and then also the individual's time to resolve those errors, and that can vary wildly lower or even more expensive than that number depending on whether you're using an outside firm or it's going to IT or if it's being used within the card office themselves. And then automating the workflows around $20,000 just in terms of the amount of time. So if you're saving about 800 hours, and we're sort of assuming that a fully burdened employee would be around $50,000 from an operator that's helping to issue those credentials. Now, if that number is more or less, you can just sort of divide that out. We assume that there's around 2,000 working hours in a year, and so if we're saving 800, that's almost half of that. So in total, $50,000 total cost savings is what we kind of estimated, with about 800 hours that can be saved, either put to other activities or whatnot. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of perspective in terms of amount of time that could be saved if you automate your workflow, and amount of money that could be saved conversely by doing some of those things. So hopefully interesting.
One thing I'll note there, Niels, is that each hospital is a little bit unique or different. The number of FTEs, the number of individuals that are working on the onboarding process or touch the onboarding process. So we're happy to get with you and really kind of map it out and figure out what are the true numbers, because we want to use your data, utilizing how much time it does take from your standpoint, how many individuals are touching the onboarding process, and do those calculations for you. So I think that's a really good general ROI that you just delivered, but it is going to change a little bit. So again, we like to use actually your data, and that's where we sit down with you and help you map that out.
Yep, yeah, of course, and just reach out to ColorID or ourselves, and we can get you a more detailed look at what that would be. So
yes,
hopefully that interesting details and information. So thanks again for sharing that. Hopefully that gives you some information to bring back to your teams and some of that, what that cost saving is. All right, so now we want to get into the demonstration portion of the webinar. But first, what we want to do is give you a little bit of a lay of the land, if you will, in terms of how the different components fit together, and you know, at a high level architecturally what that looks like. So at a 10,000 foot view, you know, we've got HID Safe with HID FARGO Connect. In the middle, we've got you know, essentially the cloud, whether that's on-premise or hosted environment, that's sort of connecting all these pieces together. And what you're going to end up seeing is that as an operator, you're primarily going to be using the HID Safe solution, right? So when you need to capture a photo, when you need to hit print, when you change any details of an employee, you would be using HID Safe. So you'd have just a single view, you know, one window for that operator to be using, so they wouldn't need to swivel between multiple applications to onboard an employee. They don't need to go into the PAC system. They don't need to go into the HR system. They can do everything from within HID Safe. And once they've created that record or onboarded that employee, then all the information will be fed out to those other systems. So from an operator perspective, they'll be using, you know, HID Safe, and they'll be using the information on the right-hand side, or I should say the components on the right-hand side from HID FARGO Connect to pick up those badges once they've been printed, or interacting with the FARGO Connect console, which really is the brains to a lot of the card issuance side. So it takes the printers, which, you know, are relatively dumb, and it makes them a little bit more smart. And so that's going to be what an operator is going to see typically day to day. From an administrator perspective, you're going to be using the HID FARGO Connect production portal. So this, as Andrew will kind of show, has a lot of different functionality to it in terms of the print issuance side of it. So you'll be able to design your cards, manage your printers, whether that's, you know, assigning them to a different location, looking at the support and consumable status of those individual printers or as a group. So if you need to change printer settings, you can do that from within this portal. You can do that to all of them, you know, at one time. You don't need to go in to each different workstation physically. You can do that, you know, in the comfort of your home, sitting on the couch. You can actually change the print settings, check on the consumable status. So that's where that's going to take place. So from an administrator, you'd be using the production portal to make any of those changes. So this just gives you an idea of when Andrew goes through the demonstration. You know, you'll see that there's the HID Safe component, and then there's the production component for, you know, card designer and everything printer related. And from a FARGO Connect console, since this is a bit of a new piece, so many of you are probably familiar with the printing side of things, but the console brings a new twist, let's say, to the movie in terms of printing a card. So where typically you have your PC connected over USB to the printer, within the HID FARGO Connect solution, we have a console. And so what this is a device, an appliance that makes the printers a little bit more intelligent, in that we can, you know, send information back and forth between the console, and then that will then issue the credential to the printer. And this allows those printers to be in the cloud or be on the Internet of Trusted Things, right? So they become a smart edge device. But not only does it do that, it allows for some additional functionality. So as an operator, I can go into the console, I can look to see if I have any badges to be printed, and then I can release those print jobs. So rather than just having a print job be sent to a printer and it prints off automatically, which we can certainly do, you can set up the system such that an operator needs to authenticate to the console. And so that's why you see a card on top here. That person's actually used a contactless card to log into the console. And then they can access their print jobs and they can release a print job. So it really allows for a secure remote issuance capability. So you can send a print job from where I'm located in Minneapolis to Texas, and then the operator in Texas logs in to the console and then releases that print job. So it's pretty nice on that end. They can also see the different consumable statuses of any printers attached to this console, which it'll support up to 3. It's very plug and play. So if a printer does go down for any reason and you plug in another printer, there's no drivers to install. All you simply do is go in and from a drop down say, here's a new printer, look at the serial number, identify it, and then it's away and good. You don't have to go back in as an administrator and make any changes in the main system or install any print drivers. It's just a simple drop down to get that information there.
I was going to say one thing, Neil's here, for those organizations that have multiple hospitals, being able to secure a printer and a console, it could be just even in a secure closet. You don't have to have a full badging office at these remote locations in order to distribute those badges. Of course, it's all happening from a central hub, sending that information over to that console so that administrator can present their credential and authenticate themselves, and then print the badges that are associated with that administrator.
Perfect. All right, and now what we'll do is we'll hand it over to Andrew here. And so Andrew is going to take you through a little bit of a walkthrough of the application and give you a little bit of a demonstration. So Andrew, I'll hand over right so you can become a presenter.
All right, I'll quickly introduce myself. I'm Andrew Morris. I work with HID. I have a long history of providing pre and post sales support. But you could think of me as being the subject matter expert in FARGO Connect and also SAFE for a little bit. So hopefully everybody can see my screen. This is what SAFE looks like. And what I wanted to kind of show was what a everyday operator would do within SAFE when they say wanted to print a card for somebody, right? So all of the background workflows and everything have already been created within SAFE. So it's importing user identities, it's connected to the different PAC systems, different HR systems, things like that. And here's a simple list of users. So let's say Mel walks into the office and wants a new card, right? So I'm just gonna kind of search for Mel real quick. And it's gonna show Mel here. I already have a valid photo in here. I already have some of their information as far as name, their locations, things like that. And I could view their access cards. So let's pretend I wanted to go ahead and reprint this card and just show you what it would look like. So there's different fields on here. I can choose which badge template. Maybe I want to do an employee card or a contractor card or something like that. You can change a lot of these fields right here and there. And let's say I went ahead and did that and hit save and cancel. Let me clear all these things out, all my test stuff. What ends up happening is you hit print here. That then takes the information from SAFE and passes it off to FARGO Connect behind the scenes. You don't have to switch to another view to see FARGO Connect or anything like that. FARGO Connect will then route it to the appropriate printer, print it, read the card number, and pass it back. And that card number is going to appear here, just like this one is. And then SAFE will then take it through the rest of the workflows, passing it off to the various PAC systems and assigning access rights and things like that. And that is what a everyday operator would do, would be printing these cards, either one at a time or bulk actions, things like that. So this is the everyday card operator. Now, as far as administrators go, they're going to be in there setting up these workflows within SAFE and things like that. But also they can do day-to-day maintenance on the printer side. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over to that. So this is the FARGO Connect portal. This is the main dashboard page. You can see a list of jobs that have been either submitted, already printed, failed for whatever reason, maybe you're out of cards, something like that. You can proactively look at this page and see where everything is doing in your ecosystem. So you can see I have a few print jobs that are waiting to be printed. Maybe you can look and see maybe your printer's offline, something like that as to why they haven't printed yet. Perhaps it's just the middle of the weekend and nobody's there to release them. Beyond just the print jobs, you can see your devices. So you can see what printers and consoles are online or offline and what's going on with them. But you can drill in further to those. So I'm going to show you that right now. This is everything that's connected to this test instance. And let's say I want to look at this, this Derek console, which happens to be in Malaysia. When I click on the printer there, I can see what kind of printer it is, its serial number, what its ribbon and film or laminates, anything that's associated with the printer you can kind of see. So proactively you can look and say, oh, okay, 32%. That's that's a little on the lower side. Hopefully they have some more stock of those ribbons. So you can check to make sure that they have extra stock, or you can send extra stock, or you can make another order, something like that, because you don't want to run out of ribbon in the middle of printing, say, 100 cards, right? Digging in further, you can have more information about this printer, the firmware version, if it needs to be updated, anything like that, what's installed in the printer. This is helpful when maybe there's a problem with the printer and you need to send support some information. It's all right here that you can easily copy and paste. And then you have different settings that are for the printers. So things about making the black a little bit darker or making the colors more vibrant. Perhaps you have some issues with the cards not adhering properly. You can make all of those kind of temperature and speed settings here. And you can do it from your home to wherever the printer is. And then also the very low level printer settings, as far as moving the cards a little bit this way or that way, changing the angles, anything setting wise that you might need to do with a printer, you could do through here. Usually you would work with our support or your partners to help figure out which settings you need to change, because maybe you have a card that's not printing properly in one location. You can make these changes here. All right. So the next thing I want to show you is the designer or the layouts of your badges. So you could have multiple different designs. You could have employees, contractors, I mean, as many as you would like. And they're mapped within SAFE in that drop down that I showed you earlier. So let me just open one up here. This is just my test card. Here's just a simple design I threw together. It's a combination of static text or images. So perhaps you have things that are always the same. Maybe you have a logo here. Maybe you have a background image of some kind. And then also variables. So things like first name, last name, maybe what's imprinted on a barcode, the user's photo. All of these things are sent from SAFE to us in the background. So all of that configuration is already done. And you can design your card and use these variables and these fields as many different times as you want in different layouts.
Andrew, there was a question in regards to the photo and how you maintain the standards across all your credentials with the photo. Could you speak to that briefly?
Yeah, so that would be done inside of SAFE on the SAFE side. So all of the photo verification of, you know, is the guy wearing sunglasses or does he have a hat on and stuff like that is all done at the SAFE side. So once those photos are approved there, then they're sent to us. So we don't verify on the FARGO Connect side what's going on with the photos or the data. We're simply consuming what SAFE is sending us. So those workflows would happen on that side.
Very good.
Mm-hmm. But what you do actually configure on FARGO Connect beyond just the layout is this is where you set up your smart card or magstripe encoding, right? So if you happen to be using magstripe, you set what you want to put on the tracks here, and that information is again sent from SAFE from the different sources that they're able to pull from to put on the magstripe. So maybe you have an employee ID or something like that that you need to put on the magstripe, you would do that here. And then also with smart cards. So if you're using iClass or CIOS or something like that, you configure that here on a per template basis. So this way, all of that is done and associated with the card. So maybe employees are using CIOS cards and contractors are using, I don't know, plain plastic or prox cards or something like that. You can set up different configurations for different layouts. They could all be the same, they could be different. It's really up to how you need to design it for your system. But what's important is all of that is done here. So that includes your formatting, or if you had elite keys, that would be done here as well. And we take care of it on the FARGO Connect side. So simply what we're doing is you print it from SAFE, it comes to us, we do the encoding and reading of the cards, and we return back those numbers for SAFE, and then they take them and then push them to the different pack systems. The last thing I'll point out is on these per layouts, you can also specify which printers you want to enable for the layout, which laminates you want to enable, and also which ribbons. So that is helpful for if you want to have, again, employees with the employee or company branded laminate, whereas contractors, you don't want to have that. You want a clear over laminate. So it allows you this flexibility using the same printer or even different printers to specify different things for different groups of people. All right, Nils, I took a real quick amount of time to run through everything, but I can go ahead and turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Andrew. That was good. So I'm gonna bring it back over here. All right, and so to sort of wrap up, hopefully everybody got a good sense for how HID Safe with FARGO Connect sort of interact with each other to sort of streamline that process and what the two applications look like. And it's not just presentation-ware, but a lot of the things that we talked about today are founded on the solution and the products and how they work together to build in that nice offering. So there's a handful of minutes left here, so we'll kind of leave you with some final thoughts and open it up to some questions for the last couple minutes. But ultimately, we want to make sure people understand that with FARGO Connect and HID Safe, you'll be able to streamline the entire process, issue from anywhere, from any device. We can really cut down on the stress, making the complex process a little bit more streamlined, and making sure that it all happens with superior data protection, in addition to all the other things that we had previously mentioned. So with that, if you have any questions, please into the poll or into the chat window, and we'll kind of go through those as we see them. So I got a question coming in here asking what types of contactless cards are supported. Yeah, and with the HID FARGO Connect solution, you'll be able to support all the different HID cards from Prox iClass to HID CIOS. We also support MyFair and DesFire credentials, being able to read those during the print process. And typically it's reading information, but we can also write data. So just contact us and let us know what you're looking to read.
I also see a continuation of the photo or the picture capture question in the chat. Yeah, so Safe does have the ability to capture photos as well as upload photos. So if you happen to be pulling it up on an iPad or something like that, you could use that camera that's native to what the browser is that you're on.
That's correct. And if you allow employees to submit their own photos, there's a process that could be an approval process before that photo is accepted according to your standards and terms. So there's ways to kind of work through that workflow.
See another one coming in regards to the automated workflows is that, it's asking, is it something that, can be customized for their organization? And yes, that's right. So what would happen is the team would kind of work with you to understand, what different solutions, whether there's different databases or different front end systems like a PAC system that you need to send information to or from. And they'll build up with you the configuration such that, based on the rules and the workflows that you have in your organization, it'll work for you. So it is geared and tailored to meet the needs of your organization.
And then as far as different solutions or access control systems, existing systems you might have from a PACS perspective or authoritative sources, HR, where we work with you to say, how do we map and interface across those? With SAFE, you have a 50+ different access control systems and 20+ different authoritative sources that we have interfaces today with. So that allows you to really look at your different systems that you have and how they can play into the onboarding solution.
And I see another question coming in here around the HID console, the FARGO Connect console, and if it works with other software platforms. So the console works with FARGO Connect, so that entire solution can work with different systems. So while HID FARGO Connect works extremely well with HID Safe, it can be integrated into other solutions, as needed. But in terms of getting the automation, that workflow done, it seems to work really well with SAFE, which we've done in a couple different instances. But as an example, in the higher education space, there's a solution called Seaboard, and there's others, and we've been integrated into their offering. Since what they specialize in is the higher education space, they use FARGO Connect for the card issuance within that system, so it is extensible to other offerings.
If there's no other questions, I think we should turn it back over to the ColorID folks. Again, thank you, ColorID, for hosting us today, and we will close it out.
Thank you so much, Jeanette and Dale. You guys did a fantastic job. We really appreciate you guys taking the time, and of course, everybody for attending as well. We did record the presentation today, and we'll plan on sharing it with everyone via email here in the coming days. Certainly don't hesitate to reach out with any other questions as they arise. We and HID are more than happy to take the time and, again, do a little consultation, a deeper dive. Everybody's situation is different. But thank you again, guys. Again, fantastic job. We really appreciate everybody joining us today, and have a fantastic afternoon.